Welcome back, everyone, to a Tuesday edition of Back Your Play with Q. Rich Quinones here, hashtag BYP. Check out the YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q, second portion of the show. We are going a little blue, a little Giant-centric. Chris Rosa does a great job. Follow him on Twitter at Giants Carb Crush, NewYorkGiantsRush.com. Giant Guys podcast contributor, kind enough to join me. He's got the backdrop. He's got the hat. You wish it was Sunday against the Vikings, 425 window. What's going on, brother? Appreciate a couple moments, man.
Rich, no, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I enjoy your work as well. So I appreciate it.
You guys got a lot to talk about this week, right? With the pod. I mean, I'll tell you, it's funny. I hearken back to when the talking heads basically said in October when the team, I think, was 4-1, 3-1. You know what? You might as well just tank, right? You know, just forget about it. Get rid of Jones. Saquon's not going to be the same. You got a first-time head coach and Dayball, different GM. And then they just quietly kept winning games. And granted, you stub your toe along the way. But I was impressed with what the Giants were able to do this year, given the lack of talent in certain positions. So what's your overall assessment of the Giants right now, year one, under Brian Daboll?
Yeah, Rich. I mean, just like a lot of fans, who would ever have thought they'd be in a playoff game coming up this weekend? But I think when you looked at the roster going into the end of training camp, you had some great pieces that were there, you know, starting out on the offense and defense, and you had a lot of holes. And depth, like a lot of teams, was an issue. But it's amazing what Joe Schoen has been able to do with picking guys up off the street that were on waivers, picking guys up off the practice squad. And I almost beg the question, you know, is the depth really that bad? I mean, it's almost a combination of how great these coaches are coaching these guys up. But yet when you pick up a guy like Isaiah Hodgins, hey, he came from a great franchise, a great team with Buffalo. They could only have so many receivers, right? So some of these guys came from some very good places where it just became a numbers game, and the Giants were able to snag them. And one of the benefits of having such a poor year last year is that they were high up on the waiver wire those first 3 or 4 weeks. So they were able to snag some of these guys ahead of, let's say, the other 28 teams because they were at the top of the list. So, you know, that was one good thing that came out of last year, too, besides the draft picks. They will get some of these waiver claims.
That's an excellent point you bring up. And I think, too, to kind of piggyback on that, when you think about it, we knew going into the season the offense was going to have issues. I stated this months ago. I stated it with my 27 Q podcast with Brandon Jacobs. And he kind of disagreed a little bit with me. But I said, I'm only concerned about 2 things this year. I want to see what Daniel Jones can do. And again, let's be honest, I think under the circumstances, he's played really well. And I was never the biggest Daniel Jones guy, but he's won me over. And I want to see if Saquon could be healthy because I wrote him off. Well, I'm 0 for 2, right? So Jones performed brilliantly and deserves the money he's about to get paid. And Saquon played back into form. And to your point, Chris, with some of the lack of talent, you lose Shepard. You lose Robinson, right? You kind of got a potpourri at the tight end. James, we were crushing this kid after the fumbles against Seattle, and he's turned out to be one of the most reliable wide receivers, Hodgins. So I don't know. I think the head coach already solidified his spot for coach of the year, but I also believe the quarterback, even though people don't want to hear this, the quarterback has played himself into the realm now where he's a top 15 guy, and he's the face of the franchise. And I believe he can be the franchise quarterback going forward.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I think he's done everything that he possibly could this year with what he's had to work with. When you talk about, like you said, Rich, the receiving core, a banged up offensive line coming into the season with a Shane Lemieux and some of these other guys, a Zudu who was supposed to get plugged in the guard, a Feliciano who's really just kind of like average, who's played probably better than we all thought the past month or so. He's finally playing better. So, yeah, I agree. Just the cards that we were dealt, I think they've maximized it. You know, they've done as much as they could with as little as they have. And don't underestimate the coaching staff, right? A receivers coach like Groh, Jerome Henderson, the defensive backs coach. It seems like no matter who they've gotten off the street or whatever type of, you know, team they came from or what type of concepts they've been used to working, Wink has made these guys and also Kafka fit right into the system that they want to play. So, and playing to their strengths, right? Not trying to take a round circle into a square peg.
No, and that's the beauty of the coaching job they've done. I even failed to mention Kenny Golladay, where, look, it reminds me of a struggling slugger right before the playoffs, man. You get a meaningless home run late in a game, and maybe it gives him momentum. Maybe he gets some snaps. And again, people don't want to hear this, but also go and look at some of the picks that Gettleman decided to draft. Some of them have panned out. I mean, there's hits and there misses. My concern with this team going into the playoffs against Minnesota, I feel as though, and the fans can be fans, man. I do sense there's a little overconfidence, right? Let's not just dismiss Minnesota. I mean, they've got some weapons, obviously. McKinney comes back. He's still not 100%. We don't know if Adoree Jackson is going to be out there for the Giants as well. You just don't want to mess around with that type of injury. That secondary is depleted. My fear, my concern is a lot of times with the blitzing and get these guys in third and long situations where it is feast and famine, right? Because you are leaving those corners out on an island. And I can see Cousins having some opportunities, if that's the case, come Sunday to pick them apart.
Yeah, no, I agree, Rich. And the big Justin Jefferson play on the last time they met, that Wink got, let's say, some heat, but there was some questions. Why didn't they go to more of a zone? At that point, with the long yardage, and then obviously they kicked the field goal. So, maybe Wink learns from that. If Adoree's not in there and they play a little more zone, and a little bit less man, and maybe is blitz crazy. And honestly, that Minnesota offensive line is so banged up. I don't think they necessarily have to blitz as much as they would have in the past. They might be able to get there just with those guys up front.
That's what you hope for.
Yeah.
That's what you hope for. Their linebackers thin. We know that. You've seen some guys step up, which is great. Right. I think.
And Rich, if I could stop you, what I think is going to help on Sunday is Gerard Davis, the new pickup they picked up on waivers, or on the practice squad from the Lions. He had 10 tackles. It wasn't, without fanfare, nothing spectacular, but he was steady. I think another week in the system, he got his feet wet. But I think what's going to help him is having Dex and Leo up front, plugging those holes and being that thumper run stopper, which we've been looking for. In that inside.
Yeah, no, it's a great point on Davis, and you're right. I was going to bring him up, and as far as having Dex and Thibodeau making plays, being that game wrecker, Giants cannot. You listen. They can ill afford to get in the red zone and settle for field goals. They're going to have to manufacture. They're going to have to score touchdowns. Is really what they're going to have to do. You can't get in a shootout against Minnesota. And you can't rely on Cousins to have that bad pick late that I think everyone's kind of waiting to see if Cousins is going to have. Captain Kirk, my guy, I get killed on the air for talking about him because you could have argued MVP at some point and then he reverts back to where he reverts back to. But I think overall, for the lack of talent, I was reading the other day on Twitter, and I don't take much of what people say on Twitter at times really to heart. But I think I really never do with anything, good, bad, or indifferent. But I found it remarkable how, because they rested starters, that hurts Dayball's case. And because Kadarius Toney is making a play or two with Kansas City, that hurts his case for Coach of the Year. I think it's asinine. I think, if anything, if you look at the guys that he's thrown out there and he's gotten the most out of them, to me, it strengthens his case for Coach of the Year. It doesn't diminish his case.
I agree 100%, Rich, 100%. I mean, how many times are we going to go back? Toney obviously didn't want to be here. He played pretty much right away with Kansas City. So we would have been having that yo-yo act back and forth if he was here. And you know what? It takes away from guys that are going to be on the field, like a James, a Hodgins, and, a Slate. And so, yeah, I agree with you.
Have you seen enough from Daniel Jones that you're comfortable if the Giants turn around and say, look, a 4-year deal?
Absolutely. I would think on a 3 or 4 year deal, maybe an option at the end where the Giants could get out if they had to, but you don't want to let him go to March and get on the open market. I've been saying this with a team like Washington. There's so many teams looking for young quarterbacks or established quarterbacks. He would be snagged up, I think, pretty good, or have offers. So yeah, I'm fine with that. He's shown enough. One of the things going back to last year that I questioned was his pocket presence. Was he able to feel the pressure and progressions? I think he's checked those boxes this year. Surprisingly, I was under the belief that, and I've heard this, and I'm not a quarterback, but you've heard from former quarterbacks that either you got it or you don't got it to feel pressure. Yeah. And I didn't think he was able to feel pressure, but I think what he's done this year is that time clock in his brain And if you notice, he goes. He's not waiting too long back there surveying the field. It's like the buzzer goes off and he's taken off. And that's something we hadn't really seen from Jones in the past, sitting back there. So I like the fact that, he's taken off a lot earlier and sooner. And I think he does feel that pressure. It sure looks like it, when they're on him.
I'm wondering though, and I know the reports were coming out early this morning, I think yesterday with Boomer Esiason with the Fan and CBS Sports was reporting that, listen, they're trying to get a contract done prior to the game. I'm waiting to see if they're going to wait till after the playoffs, right? Because you're not going to sit there and say he goes 20 or 25 for 286 and they win. They're not going to sign him on Monday. I think you let it play out. I don't know if that's good or bad, but the one thing that I think people forget at times, you are so used to having a statue back there in Eli for 15 plus years who didn't trust the offensive line late, that would just fall to his knees, right? Let me save the play, so to speak. Daniel Jones's legs are a major X factor. I can go to the Chicago game, the Carolina game. We can go to the Washington game, the Titans game, where he not only kept drives alive, but his scrambling ability really made the defenses start to think. And if they have to drip back or they have to commit, and he had some big plays with his legs this year. To me, that is a major X factor. And I think that's going to prove to pay off big time dividends come Sunday against Minnesota.
Yeah. And although his sliding may not be the best, you do notice that he's on the sideline a little bit more, waiting to that last minute to get out of bounds. Listen, when he's by the goal line, like he did against the Colts, he took on the hit by the linebacker and snuck in there. But I think he's trying to get down a little sooner.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have to take that hit. I mean, you saw with the forearm he took from that Colts defender, which was the unnecessary roughness, unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. So he gets down, I think, a little bit better than he did in the past. So I'm giving him credit for that as well. He's not taken as many hits as he may have done last year. I think he's learning. He's maturing.
Where are you guys, and I'm sure you guys talk about it on the pod, where are you guys on Saquon? I mean, I would say I was 95%. I didn't think he was going to be the same player. And I hate to say I wrote him off. I did. Shame on me. But we also know, but we know too, Chris, and you know this, and I'm sure you guys talk about it, right? You don't need stud wide receiver and a stud running back to win a Super Bowl. You can have complementary pieces because they got to pay Saquon, got to pay Daniel Jones. You're going to have to pay Lawrence. We'll talk about that Williams contract. Julian Love is what the guys got to get paid. So where are you guys at when it comes to Saquon Barkley?
Yeah, earlier on, when he really started out on fire, like a lot of people saying we have to sign him. Then he hit that little valley during the season. There was a question about the shoulder injury. Is that affecting him? Maybe we shouldn't. But I think maybe you franchise him. So I think it's split down the middle. I think Jones becomes the priority because quarterbacks are hard to find. Running backs, as you know, in the draft, you could find guys late, maybe not of a Saquon caliber, but you could find a solid running back. We saw the guy Pierce from the Texans, who's a hell of a running back who went, I think, undrafted from Florida, or went in the later rounds. So I think in terms of Barkley, if they can't work out a deal, maybe they franchise him. Or maybe they franchise him and then work out a deal long-term. But, he's touchy with running backs. But I think they're going to try and work a deal. And I think a lot of people that I've spoken to want a deal to be worked out as long as it doesn't hamper what Shane wants to do in the offseason with filling in some of these holes. And salary cap's going to go up. That's going to help. But, something that could work for both parties. After Jones, if they could work it out, I think they will. But I would not pass it by with the franchise tag, which I think isn't that much more than what he'd be getting paid right now anyway.
So the concern after that Houston game, right? He had career high in carries, $152, and he had that major drop. And this is something that even Brandon was talking about on the other pod, where the Giants just don't pay running backs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And, I don't know if now all of a sudden different regime, still same ownership, but to some extent, how much input are they going to have? I mean, you would love to see them kind of keep growing these guys, but the reality is, the running back position, we can talk about fair market, so to speak, but you can also talk about running backs who have logged a substantial amount of carries, and then the drop off, the Chris Johnsons, the Larry Johnsons, that, the Eddie Georges that had that precipitous drop the year after they signed those big contracts. So that worries me a little bit. I mean, I guess that's a conversation for another day. But I like where they're at right now. I mean, think about it. Look at the other team across town, right? The Jets have major issues. I think Salah's on the hot seat. Zach Wilson to me is a bust. I think Zach Wilson is done as a quarterback with the New York Jets. I really do. I just think the body language. I think when you have teammates come out and wear a shirt supporting the backup, that speaks major volumes of where they're at with this kid. So for everyone that thought the Giants going into the season, win total 7, they surpassed it, they get 9. I think it's been a hell of a season for them. I'm still not going to sit here with the utmost confidence and say they're going to win this game on Sunday. I'm just trying to be objective. I don't like when I would prefer it when, hey, you're all on Minnesota.
Yeah.
Right.
Wasn't that the Giants' way, right? When you don't expect much from them, they show. So yeah. I'm right with you. The more pub they get, it seems like it works against them. But I'm with you. I'm 50-50 split on this game. I mean, the crowd's going to be rocking, right? It's they know our strengths and weaknesses, and we know their strengths and weaknesses. I will say the two big pluses in our favor. Once again, their offensive line is banged up for the Vikings. They may be going with 2 guys. Backups and a third stringer being the second guy at I think it is guard or center in place of Bradbury. And when you look at their running game, they play a lot of zone running. So they don't really hit the gaps as much. And that's the kind of weakness with the Giants. So I think that outside running game could help the Giants with the Jalen Smith on the field flying around. So
Cook's a nice back, man. He's a real nice back, even with the screen passes. You know, you mentioned Jefferson. We didn't even mention even Thielen, Adam Thielen. He's kind of the afterthought.
Yeah, and that's what scares me, Rich. He hasn't done much this year. I mean, he's played well, not up to maybe what we're used to. You know, this would be typical Giants, like he comes out of nowhere on a Sunday, right, and lights it up. But I hope that's not the case. But, yeah, he's kind of not been the typical Thielen that we've seen years past. He's getting a little older, but I guess everything's going to Jefferson, right? That seems to be the guy, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, look, you know this, right? You can't. There are no gimmies, especially when it comes to this team. I mean, there have been games where I remember, and these are not even the playoff games. I mean, the one Minnesota game that still, I just can't get over was 97-98 when I still think to this day that Reed's foot was out of bounds and they couldn't get the onside kick and it was on Callaway.
The Chris Callaway jumping on it, right? Yeah,
that was the bro. I had Jim Everett and Flipper Anderson troll me the other day because it was like 33 years ago the other day with the Flipper game, right? And to this day, I'll still sit there and say the BS call on Sheldon White. That was not pass interference. So I've seen enough to know. Listen, before I let you get out of here, and I appreciate the time, where can everyone follow you guys? And, you guys obviously go Giant-centric, Giant heavy. Where can they follow the pod and everything?
Yeah, so you can follow us at NY Giants Rush on Twitter, and I'm at Giants Carb Crush. And then you could also look us up on YouTube under the Giants Guys. So, it's the same crew, the Rush crew doing the show every Tuesday. Tonight, we do have Paul Dottino on at 8 o'clock tonight, so please tune in for that. The good group will be on tonight for the show. And Rich, we'd love to have you on in the future as well. So,
absolutely.
We'll be sure to set something up, maybe after they win the game on Sunday.
You got the confidence, right?
Some post game.
That's how it should go. But
that would be great.
Chris, I appreciate a couple moments. Thanks for jumping on back your play.
Wait, Rich, before you go, I want to hear your score. Give me your take on Sunday. Let's hear.
Well, I reserve mine till right around Sunday.
Okay.
It's just what worries me is that the game has to be played, and this is first time for Saquon, first time for Daniel Jones. He can have one of these games, like I said, where he's 18 of 20 for 235, and then boom, the back-breaking pick. I don't have a feel yet for the game, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. I don't have a feel for the game, but I'll tell you something, though. I went on the record saying, just give me meaningful football. As pathetic as this sounds, now follow me. Give me meaningful football past Halloween.
Rich, we've all said it, and I had a joke going back in October for the last, 7 years. Can the leaves at least turn color before the season's over? I was happy this year the leaves were orange and we were still in it.
Yeah, so I won't get bent out of shape if they lose the game, and I won't get too high if they win. I mean, that's, you've watched them. You after a while, it is what it is, man. I mean, it's just, you can't control the outcome of the game. You can root, you can cheer, you can be upset, but then when Monday rolls around, you get your 8 hours and you live to fight another day. I mean, when they lost to the Rams, I was so distraught. I met Phil Simms when I was a kid in White Plains, New York. I got his autograph. My father went to take me, and it was the black and white autograph, and he had the mesh, the old school practice jerseys.
Yeah, of course.
When he threw the pick and the Rams scored to go into the locker room, I was pissed. All right, fine. When they lost that game, all I remember was having a friggin' hissy fit. I got the shit smacked out of me, and I went upstairs and I ripped up the Simms autograph. So, those are the moments where, you're younger, you deal with it. I told Phil that years later when I interviewed him, he started laughing, and he called me. He basically said I was a jackass on the air for doing it, but we laughed about it. But the point is, the days of getting bent out of shape, and
yes,
I have fun with it, man. And I'm just enjoying it because they had so many bad years of football. I was a huge Eli fan. It was tough for me to see Eli retire. But again, it's all about transitions, man. It's just like in life, right? You just got to keep going. And that's exactly where we're at. So if they win, I'll be ecstatic. If they spit the bit, I'm sure I'll voice my venom a little bit here and there on social media, but I'm going to enjoy the game.
We speak the same language, Rich. I'm right with you 100%. I know exactly where you're coming from.
I say it for the younger guys.
We live to fight another day. We can't get hung up on these games too much.
It's the younger people. I'm telling you, they don't know bad football. And I can tell they're either just really big time bettors or fantasy geeks that just want to look at the box score and look at the numbers. Like, sometimes I explained to a lot of people this year that what the offense they want, it's not what they're comprised of. So think about it almost as though I'm a boxing guy. I used a boxing analogy where you're hanging in, you're picking up rounds, you're banking rounds, and then the 5th, 6th, you're wearing down your opponent and you're trying to pull off the upset late in the fight. That's what the Giants want to do. If it's the 4th quarter and this is a 21-16 game, they got them right exactly where they want them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And 5 minutes down the field, running that clock and wearing them down.
And people don't get, the games are not supposed to be sexy and aesthetically pleasing. It can't be Kansas City. It can't be Buffalo. It can't be what the Eagles are doing offensively. It's not their style. They don't have the horses. I was shocked that they put up so many points the other day against Indianapolis. I was floored because I'm like, they haven't scored more than 27 all friggin' season long. So that's why you have to take it down a little bit and say, look, if it's an ugly game and they don't turn the ball over, win the battlefield position, I'll give you an X factor that scares the shit out of me. And I'm sure you guys are going to talk about it. The punter, to me, I can do without him. And I'm going to tell you why. If you watch, he's so slow to release the ball. I said
it the other day, watching the Eagle game, even it was really bad.
And and you know this, man, in the playoffs, one block punt, a block field goal, a bad snap, a punt return, a kickoff return, a broken play, special teams. When you guys get Paul, and I know he's going to spin it to the positive, okay, but I'm curious to get his take on that because I think special teams is also going to play a factor in this one come Sunday.
Yeah, those backers better block a little bit longer because every special teams coach going into playoffs, they're looking for any type of advantage on anything to make a play. And you make up a great point, Rich, because he holds that ball a little too long. They better hold those blocks a little for that half a second longer.
Yeah, I hope so. So, all right, Chris, I appreciate it, pal. Everyone, give you
Pleasure.
A follow at Giants, Carb Rush, New York, NYGiantsRush.com. Giants Guys Podcast as well, contributor on Twitter. You got the link in your bio. Have a good show tonight. Hopefully the Giants get the W on Sunday and we talk again.
Sounds great, Rich. Looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody.